I also want to just add that
Hey, this is Pepper from Seattle.
Pepper from Seattle.
Yes.
Could you speak just a little bit louder into your mic? You're just a little bit low. Other than that, you're coming in great.
Yes. And I completely agree with you that there's this fine line between conspiracy theories and this more broader parapolitical. And I think conspiracy theories like Pizzagate are easy to shut down because they become too specific. But QAnon has been so successful because it's broad and it kind of seeps its way through Facebook. And my question for you is there policy that can actually combat this and keep up with this? How do you address something that's so insidious and spreading so rapidly?
I don't think you could go policy when it comes to this. You can go the policy route when it comes to this stuff, because I think that actually
I agree.
Will just embolden it. I actually think,
right.
Recently there was that vote in the House, I believe, to basically speak out against. The vote was basically to just say I am against QAnon, and I think the play from Democrats was smart, basically in terms of just getting certain Republicans on record to not being able to do that. But and that's why I think this is maybe one very rare exception. I think this one was okay. But for the most part, I would say that if you had everyone voting against this thing, I agree, QAnon is bad, that will feed into the conspiracy even more. But this time around, though, I do think that the benefit of getting these Republicans to say they could not, downplay QAnon, they could not attack QAnon, I think that was worth whatever little bits they gave to QAnon, because, at the end of the day, that's not really going to change QAnon, the people who believe in QAnon's mind or whatever. But
it's very tricky to come up with a policy solution to this within our current framework, right? Because we have a thing called the First Amendment that says people can say whatever they want, short of, yelling fire in a crowded theater, I guess. And I think there is an argument to be made that this is somewhat analogous to this when you have guys showing up with guns to pizza places. But I doubt that our current government, certainly our current courts, would agree with me on that, because they're just going to do whatever benefits the far right, because that's what they've been put there to do. I mean, looking ahead, like the problems, the reasons why we have conspiracy theories are they're not something that can be solved by policy. Like, I would be fine with the government restricting the flow of speech in this way, actually, especially if we were to nationalize these outlets. I realize that's kind of controversial, but we really need to be treating the root causes of these things that are taking advantage of our liberal values and our liberal society to, undermine the very basis for that society. We need to be regrowing social bonds. People are so alienated right now. And a big reason why they fall into this is because they're lonely. They're staring at their screens. They need community. And this is something that affects people with money. This is something that affects people without money. This is one of those offshoots of capitalism where there's not a one-to-one correlation between someone's class and the effect of this phenomenon on them. It affects almost everybody in this society. So, that's a really long answer, but we really need to become less alienated from one another if we're ever going to defeat this foe.
I mean, I think it has. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say two things really quick based on what Jamie said. The yelling fire in a crowded theater is a perfect analogy for the QAnon stuff, because they are picking very specific targets and then not so subtly saying that, things have to be done. They'll say, Chrissy Teigen, and this is a real attack they've done on her. Chrissy Teigen, who's John Legend's wife, is eating babies to rejuvenate her body. It's why she looks so young. Somebody has to do something about this to protect the babies. I mean, that to me sounds very, dangerous. You're leading someone on to do something about this. What should they do? It sounds like you're yelling fire in a crowded theater. And then, also, the coronavirus has obviously led to exactly what Jamie said. People have got sucked into QAnon in numbers beyond belief because of the pandemic and the lockdowns and the quarantines. And that's really why we are now talking about QAnon in the mainstream. And the mainstream media is talking about it. And we're talking about it almost every week on this show, I feel like, at least. and that's a major part of it. So yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Matt.
It's a nightmarish acceleration of the alienation that already existed.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say like it needs to be structural things, like honestly shorter work weeks. People need, frankly, just more time for both leisure and informing themselves. But also, there's a story that came out from WVTF, Virginia's public radio station, about this woman who worked for a company called Lee Enterprises, came and bought her newspaper earlier this year. And it had already been slashed like crazy to the point where she, on a $36,000 a year salary, was doing a weekly paper 16 to 20 pages long per week. And the only other people on staff were the advertising representative and the customer service representative. And she's an award-winning journalist. She's won awards for instance, covering problems with the water system in the community. So very important work that's being done. And she did this story about how she's a one-person newsroom, and immediately this happened. She was fired for it, and for citing, and the company cited that, and this was 3 days before her wedding. So anyway, this is one example of a huge trend that's going on, exacerbated by these major social media giants like Facebook, who've just been vampirically leeching revenue from newspapers for a decade plus now. And yeah, there's no money to inform people anymore. Like, capitalism has failed the demand to inform people. It just can't do it. So we need to massively change the corporate structure with like antitrust, and I mean, figure out a way. The Lee Enterprises own 75 daily newspapers. That should not be allowed. Like, that's a monstrosity that shouldn't have been allowed to grow that big. And so like those sorts of things are the only way. If we don't take care of this sort of thing, the monopolization of media, where every single local newspaper is actually owned by the same company like thousands of miles away, yeah, we're not going to be able to begin to fight this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a great point. That's a great point.
Info war.
Absolutely. And that's a great point of you bringing up the local, that local news story that I saw you tweet that out the other day, and I was reading about that woman who got fired. It's horrible. But the point in bringing this up with the conspiracy theories is absolutely great, Matt, because we know that there's a hunger for local news resources. People just inherently trust other people who live in their neighborhood and who are their neighbors. I mean, obviously. And we know this because look where most of this conspiracy theories, we saw this over the summer with the Antifa being bussed into our quaint little towns, misinformation that went all over the place. Where did this all fester? Where did this all get passed around? In local Facebook groups. You have people looking for local neighborhood news. They want to know what's going on down the block. They want to know what's going on in their Main Street, Anytown, USA. They can't find a legit news source, but they did find Anytown USA Facebook group with 15,000 other local people in it. They'll go there and they'll trust those people to tell them what's what more than anyone else. Because why would my neighbors lie to me? And that's like a perfect point, Matt. I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, someone needs to figure out how to take local news and get it to the point where like it's Facebook groups, because we see that there's an avenue for it. People want it. There just got to be a way to get it to them and have legitimate local news journalists and reporters being involved in getting that news to them.
Yeah. Well, maybe now that everyone's unemployed, people will do it because they've got time on their hands.
Well, maybe, good ideas do come from things like, tragedy and horribleness, but I don't know.
Yeah, probably not.
Who knows? Yeah. I don't know what else to say. Anything you want to end on, caller?
Yes, I do. I do want to end on something that I completely agree with you, that policy can address this, and that there's been a kind of a vacuum in local news and information. And the thing that I want to add that I think is fanning the flames is the amount of space that is being left for localities to interpret and decide what to do for themselves. I'll give my example, and that'll be it. For example, when Betsy DeVos said that each locality needs to determine its COVID response because it knows its own situation best, and there's really no reason to give protocol. Well, that just gives space for people to create their own information and kind of decide for themselves in some sort of self-determination. But really, it just breeds more of what you're talking about, which is bad info spreading quickly and kind of fans the flame.
Right. Thanks again for calling. This was really great that you brought what you brought up, and led to some great conversation. Thanks
for hanging on the line too. I totally forgot you were there.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. I appreciate everything that you do.
Aw,
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you.